afternoon. The UNBC Gospel Choir and Jubilee Singers, under the direction of Janice Jackson. I'm Kwesi Mfume on behalf of all of us who are a part of this, and all of us who have believed in and worked for the mission of the Great Black Wax Museum. We say good afternoon to you on this wonderful, wonderful occasion. It's a day that a lot is to be said about a lot of people. But before we do any of that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Arnold Howard, who is the pastor of the Enoch Baptist Church here in Baltimore, that he might be able to invoke God's blessings on this occasion and on all of us. Dr. Howard.
Surely to God be the glory. Let us pray. Eternal and all-wise God, our Heavenly Father, the giver of every good and perfect gift, upon whom, O Lord our God, we have leaned upon, and you have surely borne us every step of the way. We pause in this great moment of time, that we might remember and reflect and become even more inspired by the efforts of these men and women with whom we raise today. We thank you, God, for this great institution of Morgan State University and this organization, the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, and all who are here reflective of that which is good and best, and those who have heard your call that we might, O Lord our God, journey in ways that lift up our minds. We thank you, O God, for the gift of knowledge that you have bestowed upon all humankind, and those who have sought it as a way and a path to lift ourselves beyond where we are. Yes, thus far along the way, but yet there is much yet to do and a ways to go. We thank you, God, that we might lift up this as a way, the way of learning. And may, O Lord our God, you continue to lead us and guide us in this way, and bless all of those who use their minds to carve out a new way, a new legacy for those that are yet on the way. May our light so shine that others may see the good work that an education can do and give you the glory as we aspire and inspire by each other. In the Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen.
There is still some seats down front. I see some of you looking in the back there. We've got plenty of space. Well, good afternoon again. Whoa, whoa, no, whoa. No, that won't work. Good afternoon again. Got it. My thanks to all of you who have journeyed to be here, some much farther than others, but all of you got up today with one thing in mind, at least, and that was to come here to Morgan State University to be a part of this occasion. My thanks to all who are part of the Morgan State University family for hosting this event, and my thanks in particular to Dr. Joanne Martin, and posthumously to Dr. Elmer Martin. Who began as a team many, many years ago with nothing more than a vision, a dream, and a desire to capture the rich history of the African American experience and to ultimately do it in a way that would live on generation after generation. And hence today we have here in Maryland the nation's only African American wax museum with a great repertoire of individuals who are in statue form and a great Lord of hosts who look down on all of us as we, in our own way, try to find a way to capture and to save this rich history. Now, why is it important? It's important because for a race of people who have suffered, endured, and survived 3 centuries of slavery, oppression, deprivation, degradation, denial, and disprivilege, that they should have too the same honor as others in being remembered and being thought about and being studied. It's a rich history that beckons all of us to this point, and we are certainly glad that we here in 2013 can continue that history by this induction today. I want to remind you that there are a number of people who are coming before you, but allow me, as a point of protocol, to bring several up right away. None of whom need any real introduction, all of whom will still get one, briefly. We're happy to have with us the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland, Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, who is here. Who is here representing the O'Malley Brown administration, and who is here also to bring us greetings on this occasion. Lieutenant Governor, won't you please come forward?
Your steadfast commitment to the people of Maryland and your service to our country. What a privilege it is to be here today. As Lieutenant Governor, I have the honor of participating in so many significant, historic, celebratory occasions, but I can't think of many in the past 6 or 7 years that has been as meaningful to me as my ability to participate and bring greetings on behalf of the state and the people of Maryland. I want to thank also Dr. Wilson and your entire leadership team here at Morgan State University. What you do year in and year out to educate some of the best and brightest from Maryland and from around the country. So today we are going to unveil the enshrining of 4 great American educators. And these 4 educators represent not only great educators on our colleges and university campuses, past and present, but educators at every level at which we deliver education. You represent my 6th grade teacher, Ms. Robinson, who inspired me to believe that I could be anything that I wanted to be when I grew up because she cared about me and the students in her charge. You represent my 11th grade science teacher, Dr. Williams, who realized, as I did as an early age, Dr. Rabowski, that I was not going to go on to a field in the STEM disciplines, and yet convinced me that the rigors and discipline of studying chemistry would have benefits in my life nevertheless. The 4 educators who we honor today share a common among them not only a vast and deep knowledge and understanding in their fields of study, but a deep-rooted passion for and dynamic ability to motivate the students that you have touched. And today with us is Dr. Freeman Rabowski, who is a giant among men and women. I didn't need Time magazine to tell us that he was one of the 100 most influential men in the world. You only have to look at the UMBC Gospel Choir, look at the achievements in the chess club, look at the number of African Americans coming out of UMBC that are studying in STEM fields, and look beyond that as well to the fantastic work that is being done on that campus under your leadership in the humanities and the social sciences. You are a giant among men and women. We have a responsibility not just to honor and lift up their service, but to teach the next generation about their work and our history. And that's what the museum, the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, is all about: teaching African American history, teaching Maryland's history, teaching America's history. You can tell our story as a state and as a nation and as a people only if you're willing to talk about the men and the women who we honor today in this museum. And today our honorees join other prominent Americans like Billie Holiday and Reginald Lewis and, of course, Kwesi Mfume. All of this would not be possible without Dr. Joanne Martin and her husband, the late Dr. Elmer Martin. You worked so hard and sacrificed so much to make your vision a reality. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you very much for your commitment and contribution. As we look to the future, it's important that we continue to learn from our past, and that's why we're going to continue to work in partnership with and make an investment in the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum, and make sure that we share with future generations the tremendous work of these educators and all those who are honored in the museum for their great works. Thank you very much, and Godspeed to each and every one of you.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor, for your leadership in the state, for your support of Oregon State University, and for your support of the Great Blacks and Wax Museum. The next person I'd like to bring to you officially is known as the Congressman from the 7th Congressional District of the state of Maryland. Most of you will know him as someone of great passion, someone of great insight, and someone of great purpose, born out of the pain that has shaped him over the years to cause him to be as he is. And to say that he is a politician would be to miss the point. He is, in fact, our elder statesman, one of the ablest legislators that this nation has ever produced. But most of all, he is a servant, a friend, a leader, and a teacher. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Elijah Cummings.
Good afternoon, everyone. Come on, we can do better than that. Good afternoon, everyone. It is certainly my honor and my privilege to be here, and I want to, first of all, thank Congressman Mfume for his role in so many areas. He and I sit on the board of Oregon State University, and I want to thank Morgan for hosting us. To Joanne Martin, I want to thank you, and I want to thank your late husband for what you have done. Dr. Martin, as I get older, I'm constantly in search of why God placed me on this earth. Every day I ask God, my number one prayer is, God, allow me to see me like you see me. I just want to see what he sees in me so I can be that. You all, you and your husband, had a mission and have a mission to provide a mirror for our people so that they can understand from whence they have come, so they can appreciate where they are, so they can map out where they're going. Oh, that's a mission now. And you have taken it and given it every single thing you have. And on behalf not only of a grateful state, but of a grateful nation, we have come, first of all, to simply pause to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's so fitting today that we are honoring Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, Dr. Benjamin Mays, Dr. Benjamin Pauls, and Dr. Freeman Grabowski. And as I thought about all of the wax figures that are at the museum, I said to myself, this is some heavy stuff. I said, because every one of these folks, including our honorees today, they have their fingerprints on the past. They have their fingerprints on the present, and Freeman, you got your fingerprints on the future. right behind you, Freeman, is Morgan Thomas. Morgan, raise your hand. Morgan is at UMBC and she's getting ready to go to UB for law school. Is it? Am I right? Okay. And so she's about to go and do that. But the fact is, in a few years, Freeman, she's going to be some great lawyer, following the steps of a Thurgood Marshall. But your fingerprints are going to be all over. And I think about Mary McLeod Bethune and Benjamin Mays and Benjamin Pauls, who paved the way for so many of us. And so, you know, when you think about purpose, that's what purpose is all about. Making a difference for so many other people. And I know all of them, including you, Freeman, constantly say, it ain't about you. It's bigger than you. And we appreciate it. And so I'm going to leave you with this last little thought. And I think every parent can appreciate this. I was riding over here and I said, what do you say, and what is the true significance of the moment? About a year ago, I made a vow to my children that until the day I die, I would send them my thought for the day. I wanted them to have my thought for the day. I figured Joel Osteen could do it for them. They could get it from their father. So one day, my daughter, my oldest daughter, who is a PR specialist, and she basically represents the government of South Korea and Colombia, South America. And sometimes she had some low moments. And I had sent her some things, some notes about her foreparents. And this is what this is all about, Joanne. This is what about. She wrote me back, and this is what she said. She said, Dad, for so many reasons, but right now, in this moment, because you're reminding me of who I am. It's sometimes easy, Daddy, for me to forget. With distractions of every day, but you remind me that I am your daughter and the granddaughter of former sharecroppers and domestics and farm workers who could probably never imagine having a seat at the table I'm sitting at right now. But with all of that, they put a meal on the table every night and push their children to succeed. I am moved by your example and inspired by your excellence. The reason why I read that is not to make myself look good. Although I did, it did make me cry, I must admit. What it is about, Freeman, is when we, and Dr. Martin, when we see the wax statues and we read the history, and this is what this is all about. It is so that somebody will be inspired by their aspirations. That's what this is all about. Somebody will be inspired with dad and gone. Somebody traveling this road, just coming through North Avenue and walking out stronger with their head a little higher, knowing that they are on a mission and that they do have a purpose. And with that, I thank you, Black Museum. I want to thank Senator McFadden. I don't know whether he left. Senator McFadden, for all your hard work. Marie Washington, your names may never be written all over the place, but I know the role that you all have played. And so, we want to miss you. May God bless, and thank you very much.
How am I supposed to come back out now? I wore a tuxedo because I thought that would divert attention. But is Elijah coming straight? Oh, yes, he is. Oh, yes, he is. Dr. David Wilson, the president of Morgan State University, really got caught up in a scheduling conflict today that has really eaten away at him. He and I were at an event for Judge Robert Bell day before yesterday, and he just bemoaned the fact over and over again about why he couldn't be here because he has to be at the installation of another HBCU president that was pre-scheduled. So it's not my place to tell you that, but I wanted to say that as I bring forward Dr. Antoinette Coleman, who's the vice president here at the university. She will formally greet you. She's one of our leaders, and we're certainly glad to have her. Dr. Coleman.
Good afternoon. And welcome to Morgan State University. You're in one of our finest facilities, and we are so glad that you are here. And most of all, the National Great Blacks and Wax. I'm here to bring greetings on behalf of the President, but I have to digress for a moment. I met Dr. Martin, and I'm going to say this when I was younger. That's only been a few years, by the way. And she was at Coppin, and she was leaving one day. And Dr. Bosky was our Vice President for Academic Affairs, and she had this statue, parts of it, with her. And the students we were all, I'm a young professor, and I'm like, she has body parts with her, So I inquired, and they said, oh, she has this museum she and her husband are starting, and he's a social worker like you. So as I stand here from the day, Dr. Martin, when you had, I think, somebody's head with you that day, and you were on to a middle school, I remember, to do a presentation. It's just an honor to stand here and see that we are not only going to honor 4 great educators, but we are going to honor a living educator and someone who is a professional mentor to myself. So as to get back to my script, I just want to take this moment to just, again, acknowledge Dr. Martin, Dr. Alethea Stark, and Dr. Barbara Shaw, and the committee who have worked so greatly and so intensely on bringing this exhibit to the Murphy Fine Arts Center. And we are pleased. This is the second time Morgan has hosted the collection. But today, the 4 educators, 4 uplift that you will see are in all of our hearts. Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, we all know what she's done, and she will always stay with us. Dr. Benjamin Mays, can you not look at Morehouse and think of Benjamin Mays? Dr. Benjamin Qualls, he's our personal favorite here at Morgan. We have dedicated a whole seminar room to him, and we love him, and we're glad that his family can be here today. And I'm not going to say my personal favorite because I don't want, the other statues to get jealous. But Dr. Freeman Raboski, who, if it were not for his leadership, his poise, and his instruction to tell me, go to the 4th floor and teach your class, I wouldn't be able to say these wonderful things about the other 3. But as you said here today in the Murphy Fine Arts Center, Morgan will turn 150 years old. And with that in mind, it is a real honor for Morgan State, and I know Dr. Wilson will feel the same, to have this collection here in our almost reaching 150 years. So, as Frederick Douglass once wrote, educate your sons and daughters. Send them to school and show them that besides the cartridge box, the ballot box, the jury box, you have also the knowledge box, and that's what we are all here about today. The 4 master educators being honored here today are skilled practitioners in the art of constructing knowledge boxes and inspiring students to fill those boxes. Not just for the sake of a single course that they learn or discipline that we may have at all of our institutions of higher education, but to live knowledge throughout their whole lives. As you look at the 4 statues, recognize that these individuals impart knowledge throughout their lives and into the future. Douglass would be proud of our honorees, as are we. Thank you for coming, and again, thank you, Dr. Martin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Coleman. As you can see,
singers, and here we have one of our music ed majors, Mr. Glenn Roscoe, who will be directing the choirs while I lead Precious Lord, Take My Hand.
my Dr. Senator, that down, in fact, stand up. Just stand up. Stand up. He doesn't want to, but he's a big reason why we're here and why this museum will be going forward into the future. Amen. I got you. I'm going to be referencing some other people who are here also from the legislature in just a moment, but please, let's again welcome Dr. Marie Washington.
Good afternoon. You know, sometimes it's very difficult to think about what you're going to say on an occasion like today. After being given 2 introductions, I'll try not to mess it up. Today, we have the opportunity of honoring 4 outstanding educators who have committed their life work in educating, training, and preparing multiple generations for yesterday, today, tomorrow, and the future. Today's occasion will not only represent the unveiling of their wax figure, but we have an opportunity to say to Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, Dr. Benjamin Quarles, and our own Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, that we appreciate the work that you have done in the past. We appreciate the work that you are doing today. And we know that as a result of the work that you have carried out, it will have implications on individuals as they move forward in the future. Your placement of the wax figure that will be unveiled today in the National Great Blacks in Wax Museum is one that I encourage every individual, not only in this audience, but those who are not in attendance today, to make sure you have an opportunity to visit the museum and recognize the placement of their wax figures in that museum. As many of you are aware, the museum received its national designation through the United States Congress. And as the museum is celebrating the unveiling of these 4 wax figures, it is also celebrating 30 years of its existence. And as it celebrates the 30 years, the museum is embarking upon an expansion program. And this expansion program will allow the museum to expand out and cover 250 years of history. Let me say that again. The expansion of the museum will cover 250 years of history. This expansion will allow each one of us, our families, our friends, and those that we know, organizations, to find out and be able to trace our history from the beginning. So as the museum embarks upon this capital program that will serve as a major economic engine, not only for the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore, but for the communities that surround the museum site. The museum could have been located down at the harbor, or one of the noted areas that we see in Baltimore City. But it made a commitment a long time ago that they wanted to be in a fragile community. They wanted to be in the heart of the neighborhood. So as the museum grows and expands, it will also have positive spin-off that will benefit that community. The museum will serve as a catalyst for transformation for not only that community, but for the individuals that reside in that community. The museum has traditionally hired individuals from Baltimore City. However, 46% of the visitorship comes from outside of the state of Maryland. So we have work to do because we have a cherished, a fantastic museum right in our heart, but yet we are not visiting it. And we need to do so. So as we unveil the 4 wax figures today, I would encourage each and every last one of you not to have this treasure just in our midst and not know what it entails and what it encompasses. You need to embrace it. And in order for the museum to expand out, we need your support.
your individual support financially. We need you to commit, not only today, but tomorrow and in the future, to making a financial commitment to the capital campaign of the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum. This can be accomplished and will be accomplished, but it will only be done with each and every last one of us stepping up to the plate. So as we enter into the next stage of the museum's life, I asked you to also make a personal commitment to make a contribution to the National Great Blacks and Wax Capital Campaign. Each one of you are members of a community. Each one of you are members of an organization, an agency that you may work with, a church that you attend. Carry the information back. Solicit the support, because we will only be able to continue unveiling wax figures that represent our rich history as you make that financial commitment. This unveiling is one of many of unveilings that's going to be taking place across the country. And so it is important that we celebrate the unveiling of today and encourage you to visit the museum tomorrow and going forth in the future. Thank you, and thank you again.
Oh, my journey, no, long time, my journey, no, long time. Well, I wouldn't take nothing, long time, for my journey, no, long time. One day, I was walking along, well, the elements all burned, and the Lord come down, long time. Oh, my journey, no, long time, my journey, no, long time. Well, I wouldn't take nothing, long time, for my journey, no, long time. Well, I went to the valley, and I didn't go to stay. Well, my soul got happy, Lord, and I stayed all day, long time. Oh, my journey, no, long time, my journey, no, long time. Well, I wouldn't take nothing, long time, on my journey, no, long time. You can talk about me, talk as much as you please. Well, I'll talk about you when I get on my knees, long time. On my journey, no, long time, my journey, no, long time. Well, I wouldn't take nothing, long time, for my journey, no, long time.
So joining us here is a senior member of the Maryland State Senate, a friend of this community and this university, who represents Prince George's County. Please join me in welcoming Senator Ulysses Carey. And also here today, someone I'd like to refer to as a Speaker Pro Tem. Hopefully one day she will be the Speaker. She represents Baltimore County and many of us throughout the state. She's always been a friend of this university, has always added her support to whatever this museum is trying to do. Please join me in welcoming Delegate Adrian Jones. Thank you both for being with us. You know, as we get to this segment of the program, I was backstage trying to grab this moment and hold it, because they pass so quickly. And I thought about, as I mentioned before, the great sea of hosts that I was not talking about in any other way other than spiritually, that kind of look down on events like this. People who didn't have degrees, who were on plantations and in cotton fields, whose backs were bent, who couldn't speak the King's English, but who loved their belief in the future almost more than they loved themselves, and believed that if they continued to toil away, that change would eventually come. So when I think of these individuals, long gone, with the exception of Freeman, who was very much with us, and we are certainly glad of that, he represents, as do they, a kind of thought that I was thinking about Margaret Walker, and I thought about something I heard once from someone else who was referencing an event like this, and it said, no matter what segment of our history we choose to select, from the year 1619 and beyond, there were always those who stumbled but refused to fall, bent but refused to break, tired but refused to quit. They were the keys on life's keyboard that, when struck, forced this nation to come to grips with the theme of liberty and justice for all people. And that many thought those voices would fade off into innuendo, that they would disappear and become inconsequential into the future, but they did not. And they continued to show themselves again. And so I thought of Margaret Walker and something she wrote when she said, for the gone years and the now years and the maybe years, when we were washing and ironing and cooking and cleaning and sewing and weeping, never knowing, never understanding, for those cramped, dark, bewildered years, she said, when we were small and black and brown and different, and nobody wondered then, and nobody misunderstood. And then the voice of Langston Hughes, who, as you all know, came to us and said, life for me ain't been no Christmas, dear. And songwriters have chronicled that history of those stories when they wrote, freedom, freedom. Before I be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my father and be free. It was Ernie Barnes, the great painter out of Chicago, who chronicled that journey when he took a piece of canvas and a paintbrush and started to paint almost automatically the picture of an old black woman standing on a bus stop with arms full with bags, having worked too many jobs for too many years. And he looked at that picture, looked at that woman, he decided to name that picture Rock of Ages. And yes, it was Langston again who said to us, as if we ever forgot, I too sing America. I am the darker brother. When company comes, they send me to the kitchen to eat. But I laugh and grow well and eat strong. For tomorrow, when company comes, they will look at me and be ashamed of themselves, for they will see that I, too, sing America. So we'd like to move forward with this very special presentation. There are a lot of people to be talked about. Before we bring out the first presenter, I would be remiss if I did not mention the name of Dr. Alethea Stark, the Dean of the Nathan Carter School of Music, who's worked so hard with Dr. Martin and others to help make this happen, who fired me and rehired me a moment ago, and who has just been a gem to Joanne and to this process. So thank you very much, Dr. Stark. I would ask now, as we begin our presentation of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, that all of the members of the Council of Negro Women who are here, if you would please stand as a part of her extended family. Stay standing, if you will, as one who, again, needs no introduction, who was a part of your family and a part of our family, comes forward. Please join me in welcoming for the presentation of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, Dr. Thelma Daly, Vice Chair of the National Council of Negro Women, formerly the President of National Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, and a friend of all of us. Dr. Thelma Daly, would you please come forward for the presentation?
You know, when I left home today, I kept thinking about how did I get picked? I think you better sit a while. I kept thinking, how did I get picked to do the presentation for Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune? And then as I entered the lobby, I saw the wax figure of Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, who every day and almost in every speech she made, she talked about Mary McLeod Bethune. And that made me a little bit more nervous. And then Derek, who was going to present for Dr. Rebowski, and I sat as all of the people started speaking here. I caught Derek's hand. I just met Derek today. And I said, Derek, are you nervous? And he said, yes, I am. And Derek said, they're taking my speech as we went along. But Mary McLeod Bethune, a great educator. Oh, indeed, a great champion of education, humanitarian and democratic values. And even though she has been dead for 58 years as of May 18th, her power, her spirit, and her indelible imprint, I have to tell you, new as ever-present, as an ever-present, powerful aura. If you don't believe it, just ask any of those members of the National Council of Negro Women. And I want you to go with me for just a moment. I want you to just go back with me for a moment. I want you to imagine what life must have been like to a girl born in 1875 in rural, I mean rural. It says near Mayersville. It didn't say in Mayersville. It said near Mayersville. As the 15th child of 17 children, whose parents and even her brothers and sisters had been slaves. Imagine, just imagine. You know, proving that old adage, it's not so much where you begin, but it's where you end. And Mary McLeod Bethune's journey through life is a journey of power, a journey of influence, a national and international journey, a journey making life better for many, many people, for numbers untold. Numbers that can't even be solved in Dr. Rebowski's equations. Indeed, she has been described as an educator, and we honor her for education, but she's also described as a civil rights activist, as a government official, and as an organization leader. Now let me try to put this in the couple minutes that you gave me, Dr. Martin. And even though you called me late, I'm trying to put it in this for you. But imagine that she walked 5 or 6 miles to a mission school somewhere in South Carolina. And then she went on, I do believe, to Scotia Seminary. Some of you might know that as Barbara Scotia. And then on to Moody Bible Institute. But she also married in 1898, and her husband died very early in 1918. Yes, she was a teacher, but you know her for establishing a special school. But I have to tell you, she established 2 small schools before she established a school for which you remember her. She believed that education was the route to a better life. And I do believe that many in this room believe that education is the route to a better life. I hope we would translate that to many of the kids I see on the streets, who for some reason must not have heard that, must not have that imprinted in their lives. And in 1904, Mrs. Bethune moved to Daytona, Florida. And when she moved to Daytona, Florida, she rented a little old house somewhere along the road. She got some boxes, orange crate boxes. Some of you have seen those boxes, I know. And she founded then her school, which was called the Daytona Educational and Industrial Institute. She had 5 little girls, and her son was 5 years old. And she had a lot of money, $1.50. And it is believed that she built that school by selling sweet potato pies. Today, that humble beginning, and I was down there when the last president was inaugurated. Today, that school is a university. And that school is offering more than 35 majors. No other woman in her generation of the National Association of Colored Women. Now that's very important because the National Association of Colored Women was the first major organization for African Americans in this country. And for her to become president of this organization, at that time it had 10,000 members, and it was labeled as being the premier black women's secular organization in the whole world. She carried out her brilliant vision as an activist and carried out an activist role for women in both national and international arenas. But it didn't satisfy her. You know, she had to keep moving all the time, had to keep going. And so in 1935, December the 5th, she called together a group of women in New York City. And she asked them if she could, she wanted to establish a new organization. Very interestingly, she called in this group Mary Church Terrell, who was the first president of the National Association of Colored Women. Mrs. Bethune was very wise in what she did. Now, she had Mary Church Terrell in that group. Mary Church Terrell had her own group. But from this gathering in 1935, Dr. Mary McLeod established the National Council of Negro Women, and she was a president for 14 years. She poured into NCNW her fine-tuned organizational skills. She broke barriers and connected NCNW with white women's organizations because she believed she should cross the lines. One group she went into where you had to have 800,000 members, and she had, I can't tell you how many, but you had to have 800,000 members to get into this group that was a part of the War Department's Bureau of Public Affairs. She impressed upon them so much that they admitted the National Council of Negro Women. She concentrated on disenfranchisement, advancement of black women. She sponsored the SS Harriet Tubman in 1944, the first ship to honor a black woman. Her shining hour was to integrate WACS. And you remember WACS, the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps? And she won a set-aside of 10% for black women to go into the officers candidate class during World War II. She headed NYA, which was the National Youth Administration. She also headed the division, which she called the Division of Negro Affairs and the Civil Rights Commission. She did so many things, but let me tell you, she was a friend of President Roosevelt. She was also a friend of Eleanor Roosevelt. She would say to Eleanor Roosevelt, I need to see the president. And Eleanor Roosevelt would make it possible for her to see the president. She was, during this time, respected as one of the highest person of black America in terms of leading black America. She was a great educator indeed. Indeed it is that we should honor her for many, many things. opportunities for education, for civil rights, for activism. She was deeply faithful in her causes. She was deeply faithful in her belief in education. And she was deeply faithful to Black America. Proverbs 28:20 says, "The faithful will abound with blessings." And today, we honor her as we will later unveil her in the Great Blacks in Wax, Mary McLeod Bethune.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daly, and all the representatives here from the council. Please welcome, if you would, another person who will bring us a rendition. We're very happy to have her here. Jacqueline Harrison, who will do the rendition, Guide My Feet. Ms. Harrison.
Guide my feet, Lord, while I run this race. Guide my feet, Lord, while I run this race. Guide my feet, Lord, while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand, Lord, while I run this race. Hold my hand, Lord, while I run this race. Hold my hand, Lord, while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Stand by me, Lord, while I run this race. Stand by me, Lord, while I run this race. Stand by me, run this race, for I don't want to run this race in Oh, my Lord, guide my feet, Lord, while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Singing's been phenomenal, hasn't it? Going over. We want to move forward with our second presentation, that of Dr. Benjamin Mays, whose name is as synonymous with Morehouse as anything that I could ever think of. Some of you will know him as the mentor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and others will know him as a great philosopher and orator. He is the Morehouse tradition. Public speaking in my life, there is no person other than Dr. King that I have quoted more than Dr. Benjamin Mays because of his insight. He used to say proudly that the real tragedy in life does not lie in not reaching your goal. The real tragedy lies in having no goal for which to reach. He said it's not a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, but it is a calamity not to dream at all. Dr. Mays said it's not a disaster to be unable to capture your ideals, but it is a disaster to have no ideals to capture. And finally, he said it's not a disgrace not to be able to reach up and to touch the stars, but it is a disgrace to have no stars for which to reach. He said, failure is often dictated by low aim. And that low aim was not something we could not overcome, but that we must aim high, shoot straight, and stay focused on the mark. So I'm glad that we are able, and I'm speaking for Dr. Martin and the board and everyone else now, to be able to have this second introduction. I'm going to ask if there are some family members, I know there's one backstage, but other members of Dr. Mays' family who are here with us, would you please stand and allow us to salute you? And please also give a nice round of applause for today's presenter of Dr. Mays, his great niece, Dr. Michelle E. Smith.
Good afternoon. I count it an honor and a privilege to be here before you today. I won't be before you long because I know I would like to respect the orders of the house, and I might not get invited back, so I would like to just follow the order. What I would like to present today are some of the biographical highlights of Dr. Benjamin Mays' illustrious and distinguished life. I would also like to know what I consider the golden thread running throughout his life. It is a very simple word: teacher. Dr. Mays was born August 1st, 1894 and died March 28, 1984. He was 90 years old. He was a United States Senator, educator, scholar, social activist, and president of Morehouse College. Ladies and gentlemen, in all these capacities and roles, there is one simple word: teacher. How did he become such? After a year at Virginia Union Seminary, he completed his undergraduate degree at Bates College in Maine in 1920. He earned his master's degree in 1925 and PhD from the University of Chicago School of Religion. He was a student assistant to Dr. Larry Kirk Williams, pastor of Olivet Baptist Church in Chicago, who was president of the National Baptist Convention. Dr. Mays also became a pastor at Shiloh Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. In 1934, Dr. Mays and Joseph Nicholson published the very first sociological study of the Black church in the United States, entitled The Negro's Church. In 1934, he was also appointed Dean of the School of Religion at Howard University. It was while he was Dean at Howard that he traveled to India and spoke at great lengths with Mahatma Gandhi. In 1940, Dr. Mays became the president of Morehouse College, where he was dedicated to task building of men. First enlightening their minds, then by freeing men from the shackles of psychological conditioning brought about by nearly 250 years of slavery. He gave Morehouse the best of his mind, his heart, and his soul. He demanded the best from his students, faculty, trustees, alumni, and friends of the school. There he trained and inspired and transformed the minds of many young men into a brilliant cluster of leaders, Martin Luther King being one of his brightest students, whom Dr. Mays eulogized his funeral. Many others under his presidency at Morehouse went on to become great men in their own right. In 1957, he published Seeking to be a Christian in Race Relations, which he emphasized the two great themes throughout his life: the dignity of human beings and the gap between American democratic ideals and American social practices. In other words, that very simple word, teacher. In 1963, he gave the benediction at the close of the March on Washington. In 1967, he retired from Morehouse. In 1971, he published his first autobiography, Born to Rebel. In 1981, he published his second autobiography, Lord, the People Have Driven Me On. His accomplishments are legendary. He wrote 9 books, published more than 70 personal articles. He also wrote more than 1,000 articles in a weekly column for the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender. He delivered more than 1,000 speeches to audiences in the United States and in foreign countries. He has received more than 200 awards and 55 honorary degrees, and one after his death from Columbia University in New York. He has served as advisor to Presidents Johnson and Carter. What a wonderful man. What a marvelous teacher. What an example to follow. What a noble life to live. Thank you.
We want to thank Ms. Smith. We want to thank the family of Dr. Mays and all who have revered him for being here with us and for being a part of this. We're going to hear again from Joanna Ford, the soprano who you heard from earlier. I'd also like to indicate that who you heard from previously was Dorothy Fleming Williams, also. Our third induction is that, as you know, of Dr. Benjamin Quarles of Morgan State University, who actually was here when I was here as a student, and who a lot of people in this area got to know because of his quiet demeanor, his insight, but particularly because his passion about history and how he chronicled the histories of our people here and abroad, and how he did that with such great distinction. We are happy to have a former colleague of his here to do this presentation, but I want to also ask that all the family members of Dr. Quarles who are here with us, please stand. We might be able to salute you also. Thank you very much. And please join me in welcoming that colleague, University Professor Emeriti Dr. Rosalind Turboy Penn, one of the most distinguished professors to have ever served on this campus. Who else but her to present to you all, for introduction, Dr. Benjamin Quarles.
Thank you, Kwesi. It's really my pleasure to be here to see so many of you in the Quarles clan of fellow students, family members. Benjamin Arthur Quarles was born in Boston, January 23, 1904. Although he grew up in a poor neighborhood and worked menial jobs, Benjamin graduated from English High School in 1922. In 1927, Benjamin enrolled in Shaw University in Raleigh, an historically black college known today as an HBCU. He graduated valedictorian in 1931 with a BA degree in history. After earning a Social Science Research Council fellowship, Quarles enrolled at the University of Wisconsin for graduate study in history. With his master's degree in hand, he returned to Shaw University to teach, and at the same time continued graduate study toward the PhD. Benjamin Quarles was a product of several historically black colleges and universities, where he learned lessons about one's obligation to teach and to mentor, as well as to publish scholarly works. While writing his dissertation in 1939, Quarles moved to another HBCU, Dillard University in New Orleans, where he later became dean of the college. By 1952, he had published 2 major books, including the first scholarly biography of Frederick Douglass, and answered the call to another HBCU, Morgan State College in Baltimore. At Morgan, Quarles became chair of the history department and remained so until the mid-1960s. While at Morgan, he published 4 of his 10 books. In his professional prime as a renowned historian, Quarles thrived at Morgan, where he became known as an outstanding mentor and popular professor, the college's first teacher of the year. Although wooed by other universities, Quarles remained at Morgan even after the age of racial segregation had ended. Dr. Quarles never sought praise. However, others always praised his scholarship as well as his willingness to help and promote them. In the late 1960s, when Morgan State President Martin D. Jenkins recommended Professor Quarles to the governor of Maryland for the newly established honor of Distinguished Professor, Benjamin Quarles became the first in the state to receive the award. Between 1966 and 1996, he received 12 honorary doctorate degrees. In addition, Dr. Quarles received the American Historical Association's Senior Historian Scholarly Distinction Award, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History Carter G. Woodson Medallion, and the Smithsonian Smithsonian Institution National Museum of American History Lifetime Achievement Award. Retiring from full-time teaching in 1974, Quarles continued to teach graduate classes and to do scholarly writing. All the while, he mentored younger scholars, such as the founders of the Association of Black Women Historians upon organizing the group in 1979. He assisted them also when they wrote a National Endowment for the Humanities grant for research conference, which was funded in 1983. For the generation of scholars of African American history coming out of graduate school in the 1970s and 1980s, Benjamin Quarles impacted our lives through his scholarship and his willingness to advise and mentor us. We are most grateful to this brilliant yet humble man whose last scholarly article was published in 1988, the year he was 84. Thank you.
If I can help somebody as I pass by.
Thank you so much. Our last presentation of the 4 inductions is of the person you've been hearing about sporadically from speakers here, including myself, all afternoon, and that is our friend Dr. Freeman Hrabowski of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Yes. The one person who taught me the difference between alumni, alumnae, alumnus, and alumni. Am I right? I tease him about that. That was recent. Dr. Hrabowski is really much, in terms of present-day educators, one of the best examples that could have been selected for this induction. On a personal note, I thank him for his stewardship of the UMBC, for his leadership throughout the Baltimore area and the state of Maryland, but most of all for his friendship, which goes back many, many, many years. And there are a lot of remarkable things about Freeman that you will soon hear in the presentation that's coming forward from Dr. Musgrove. One of the things that struck me, though, was when Time magazine gave him this designation as one of the most powerful, influential men in the world, and I was listening on the radio in drive time trying to get somewhere, and I heard that. I felt so good that I immediately picked up the phone and called and left word, just tell Freeman we all are proud of him again. But when I turned the radio volume back up, there was Freeman Hrabowski being interviewed, and Dr. Hrabowski, despite what everybody might think about him, I think is a little shy, particularly when it comes to himself. And I'm saying this with all seriousness. He's a man of great humility, but I got the sense that day listening to him that I was right when I thought that when it comes to him, he's a little shy, because they would just saying, oh, Dr. Hrabowski, this is so rare, and nobody ever gets this, and here you are in Maryland, and throughout that interview, he kept directing the conversation back. He said, well, you know, I thank you very much, but if it had not been for great students at UMBC, but if I didn't have great staff and faculty administrators, but if my parents didn't raise me right, but if I didn't have a good wife, but if the community hadn't embraced me, he kept giving it back to all of us. And that's a measure, a real measure, a real measure. Dr. Hrabowski has been involved in just numerous civic community activities and charitable causes, giving freely of his time. And there is so little time in a day, but he finds a way to do that. He once said to me when he was at Coppin, many years ago, he said, Kwesi, you know, excellence is a premeditated condition. You have to make up your mind that you want to be excellent. It's premeditated. So I'm happy that he is here with his wife, Jackie, with his family, and I'm going to ask, before I bring Dr. Musgrove out, if all of the members of the Hrabowski family could please stand so that we too might acknowledge all of you. And here to make the formal presentation of Dr. Freeman Hrabowski is Dr. Derek Musgrove, who is an assistant professor of what else but history at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Dr. Musgrove. Good afternoon.
This spring is the 50th anniversary of the Birmingham Campaign, one of the epic battles of the Southern Civil Rights Movement. For those of you who are familiar with the Civil Rights Movement and with the Birmingham campaign in particular, you'll know that by mid-April, 50 years ago, things were getting quite desperate on both sides. Civil rights activists had filled the jails to such a point, in fact, that there were no more adult volunteers left to actually go into jail. The authorities in Birmingham had become violent. Desperate to clear the streets, they had used fire hoses and dogs, which would become symbolic of Southern brutality for the next several generations. And determined to break the impasse, Martin Luther King decided at that point, early May, '63, to send students, children, into the streets to see if they could have a breakthrough. In the midst of all the chaos, 12-year-old Freeman Hrabowski informed his parents that he wanted to march. Now, his parents were principled and religious folk. They had supported the campaign. They had been civil rights activists, in fact, since 1940s. But they couldn't bear to send their only child into the streets. Freeman, wrapped in the frightening simplicity and earnestness of youth, told his parents that as principled and religious folks, they had to stand by their principles and trust in their God. He didn't quite say it that way, he called them hypocrites. And they sent him to his room for sassing. And once he was in his room, they cried from dusk until daybreak. And the next day, the Hrabowskis did as they had taught their son. They placed him in God's hands and sent him into the streets of Birmingham. I begin with this story not to give Dr. Hrabowski some type of civil rights bona fides, but to give you an idea of the essence of the man. And it's that essence I think is so important because it drives UMBC today. It drives his students. There are choice few among us who, through nature or training, gain a firm sense of who they are and what is right. The more ambitious among them take that understanding and use it as a solid foundation on which to build a new world. Freeman gained a clear understanding of who he was and what was right from the remarkable women in his life. His grandmother had heard Booker T. Washington preach the virtues of education from horseback in Alabama and had taken them to heart. His mother, a teacher, believed that all of her students could learn and took a personal interest in each and every one of them. Freeman took these lessons and added to them a native intelligence, a boundless energy, and a singular determination. And with these three things, he began to do the things that bring us all here today. He graduated from Hampton University with honors at the tender age of 19. He secured a PhD from the University of Illinois at Urbana 5 years later at the age of 24. And as if he didn't have enough to do while he was there, he created a tutoring session for minority graduate students, for math minority graduate students along the way. At Coppin State here in Baltimore, he became the boy dean, still in his 30s. And then he had the audacity in 1987 to head to UMBC, a school that in its entire history had only graduated 20 African Americans in the sciences. And he went there for the purpose of creating a program for graduating large numbers of minorities in the sciences. Well, we all know how it turned out. In 1988, Freeman created the Meyerhoff program, which quickly emerged as a national model for training African Americans in the STEM fields. Today, UMBC produces more African American graduates in the STEM fields per year than it had in the entire time before Freeman Hrabowski got there. It is one of the top producers of African Americans in the STEM fields in the country, and the #1 producer of African Americans in the STEM fields among white schools. Along the way, Freeman took the lessons of the Meyerhoff program and expanded them to the entire school. And for the last 3 years, UMBC has been the #1 up-and-coming university in the country. Yeah. In recent years, his accomplishments have brought accolades and requests for advice from nearly everyone, from great blacks and whites on down to Harvard University and the President of the United States. And yes, I did have the arrow going in the right direction there. Let me end with this. As a student at City College in 1992, I had the good fortune to work at Great Blacks and Wax Museum on a work study. It was a senior year practicum. And that year in the museum, surrounded by the likenesses of the great men and women of my race, was a time of wonderment for me. I can remember quite vividly, in the darkness of the museum before the crowds got there, standing before the figures of Frederick Douglass and W.E.B. Du Bois, Zora Neale Hurston, and other giants of African American thought, wishing that I could have known them, talked to them, and learned of their need. And at the end of the year, I left Great Blacks and Wax for UMBC, where Freeman was serving as interim president. I did not know it at the time, but I had gotten what I wished for, a chance to sit at the feet of one of the leading black intellectuals of my time. Thank God for me. Thank God for all of us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gary Musgrove, and our thanks to all of you as we present again the University of Maryland-Baltimore County Gospel Choir and Jubilee Singers to offer a rendition for our fourth inductee, Dr. Freeman Grabowski. And they are, as has been indicated prior, under the direction of Janice Jackson. And today, Freeman, they are featuring tenor Michael Hunt, a former Meijer scholar and a former mentee of yours. Ladies and gentlemen, the choir.
Troubles come and my heart burning, and I am still and waiting in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me to more than I can be.
license paid off, I'm going to ask that the unveilings of each of our three inductees please make their way back. We're at that point in the program that calls our focus back to the beginning of the manifestation of the dream that we are celebrating today. Dr. Joanne Martin, who is the founder and president of the Great Blacks in Wax, is many wonderful things, but above all, she is a visionary who took something at a time when people said, oh, we don't need this. What are we going to do with that? How do you think you're going to do this? And just held on to that dream. In learning and in understanding the history of the museum, as I said earlier in my remarks, it's impossible to do that without also focusing in on her late husband, Dr. Elmore. I had a chance to get to know both of them as friends, as contemporaries. And when Elmer passed away on a trip to Africa with her, it hit so many of us in such an awkward way because all we could say was he was such a young man. But God calls the young and the old. He called Elmer where he probably would have wanted to be called. In Africa, the birthplace of civilization for which he longed and for which he understood, gave birth to just generations and generations of people all over the worldwide diaspora. In the early days of WEAA-FM, and I do mean early, I was 1 year out of Oregon, and as a senior here, we had fought to try to get a radio station. And by the time of graduation, we hadn't gotten it. But we all stayed together. It was a band of us students and fought and continued to do that until January 10th, 1977, when we were able to finally throw the switch and bring the station on the air. I remember hearing from a lot of people that day. I was the first person on the air, but one of those persons was Elmer saying congratulations. And it never occurred to me that that vehicle at this institution that we sit today would serve to provide a wonderful platform for the furtherance of this idea, this dream, and this vision. And so many times he and Joanne would make their way up to this campus and to get behind the microphones and to share with people what they really felt was so vital about the preservation of our history. And as they began to do that, and the times went by and the months went by, people began to buy into this infectious idea that this could in fact happen, that it should happen, and that it could happen right here in this city. I can't begin to chronicle for you the love that Elmer had for Joanne and the amount of love Joanne has for Elmer. He would sit around and talk about being a graduate student, working the registration line. One day he looked up and he saw this beautiful, beautiful woman in line. And he forgot what he was doing. And somebody said, "You doing this?" He said, "Oh, I didn't know." And he couldn't take his eyes off her. He tells that story in great detail. And people would laugh and join in with trying to remember what it was like to meet somebody that instantly knocked you over, got your attention, and you knew at that moment that was the love of your life. And they went on and got married and shared their dreams together as historians and worked and got us to this point. So Elmer, I know that you were here with us in spirit. And Joanne, I know that through many dangers, toils, and snares, it's been a long way, but you've come to be the manifestation of a person who never lets go of a dream. And so as we have these inductions today, and several years later and several years after that, all of us here who are part of this event want you to know, Joanne, that we love you, we love you. You're the Lena Horne of African American history. And your intelligence, your power, and your purpose are exceeded only by your beauty. Please welcome Dr. Joanne Martin, founder and president of the Green Blacks and Blacks Museum.
For a moment by having the members of our steering committee, would you please stand? I would also, and you may be seated, I would also like the members of our board, those board members who are here, would you please stand? I would also like to thank our public officials. You've been introduced to Delegate Jones and Senators Curry and McFadden. I don't know who we may have missed, but I thank you for being here. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor and Congressman Cummings and Dr. Antoinette Coleman for the greetings that they brought and taking time out of their busy schedule. Dr. Barbara Shaw, would you please stand? And Dr. Olivia Starr, would you please stand? These two people have, in one way or another, brought us to this day. And all of the people that I asked to stand on the steering committee and the public officials who vote our bond bills and advocate for us wherever they need to advocate. I would be remiss if I did not also ask Dr. Marie Washington, would you please stand? To Dr. Shaw and Dr. Olivia Stark, I am so grateful to you. It's not every day that we get people to believe in our museum to the extent that they have. Sometimes we get people who think that they're too big and too great for Great Blacks and Blacks Museum. We get sometimes athletes and entertainers who ask about royalties to be in our museum. And I figure Mrs. Rosa Parks, who came to the museum, never asked for royalty, so I'm not about to pay and ask for And so when I called and talked to Dr. Lebowski, he talked about the honor that it was. As I talked to the Mays and Qualls family, they talked about the honor that it was to have their relatives in the museum and to allow Great Blacks and Whites to preserve their history. And so I am so very humbled by it all, because I know that when it's all said and done, we are being entrusted with someone's life and someone's legacy. And I am thankful to all the people who have, through this 30-year journey that has been the Great Blacks and Whites Museum, who saw Elmer and me throw the figures into the hatchback of my car and drive them around and set them up in your churches, who know that they occupy, I guess that's the correct word, the guest bedroom of our 2-bedroom apartment. Those people who know that the police stopped Elmer because he had Frederick Douglass's feet sticking out of And the people from the security police here at Morgan who came in with their guns drawn because Mary McLeod Bethune and somebody and Frederick Douglass were sitting in a room where they weren't supposed to be. Threatened to shoot poor Mary McLeod Bethune. This was our first Mary McLeod Bethune. I know that Elmer and I Elmer said once, we got accustomed to being called those crazy Martins. Particularly as we talked about staying in a challenged community. Particularly as Elmer said, the conventional wisdom all over this nation is that you hide your poverty areas. And when once you succeed in hiding them, then you can succeed in neglecting them. But that we were going to create a museum so powerful, so compelling, that people all over the nation and all over the world were going to want to come to visit. So if I could get people to see what I see and what Senator McFadden sees and what Dr. Washington sees, we actually did not see North Avenue as it is, but as it can be. We asked you to understand that for 30 years those buses have rolled up to North Avenue when they come from all over. 63% of them come from outside the state of Maryland. That's tourism in its finest form. You need to understand that. And we need you to understand that those buses don't mean buses, they mean jobs and opportunity, because people for 30 years have demonstrated that they will leave New York and Philadelphia and Wisconsin and places in Florida, especially during spring break, and come to a little museum located in a fragile community in East Baltimore. That's tourism in its finest form. So we ask you to believe in the possible and the potential of this museum to create jobs, to teach our children their history, to make them tour guides, and to help them to understand the role that they play in the making and shaping of the world in which they live. And I want to end by thanking all of you for being here today. I want to honor our visionary co-founder, Dr. Elmer Martin, who said that community development and cultural development go hand in hand. And I want you to step inside of our vision and our dream and stay there with us. Thank you very much. I forgot to thank himself, and I thank himself.
We want to thank you for your patronage of this, for your belief in this dream, for your presence here today, because you could be a lot of places. and for joining all of us in wishing this museum, its founders, and its supporters the best future ever. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.